Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Crapo. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Baucus, Beckidge, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Ohio, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Coates, Cochran, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Hagan, Harkin, Hoven, Inhofe, Inouye, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Kirk, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Menendez, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson, Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, Stabenow, Tester, Webb, and Wyden. Senators voting in the negative: Ayotte, Barrasso, Brown in Massachusetts, Burr, Chambliss, Coburn, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, DeMint, Enzi, Graham, Grassley, Hatch, Heller, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lee, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McCaskill, McConnell, Moran, Paul, Portman, Roberts, Rubio, Sessions, Shelby, Snow, Thune, Toomey, Udall of Colorado, Vitter, and Wicker. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Mrs. Hutchison, no. Mr. Merkley, aye. All right. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Warner, aye.
Are there any senators wishing to vote or change his or her vote? There being none, there are 59 ayes, 39 nays. The motion to table is agreed to.
Second.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from Iowa.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions be authorized to meet in executive session during the session of the Senate on Wednesday, October 19, 2011, in Dirksen Room 106 for the consideration of a bill to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Kentucky.
reserving the right to object, I find it a tragedy that we are operating here in the Senate by introducing an 868-page bill with 48 hours to read it, approximately 1,000 pages worth of amendments to this bill with virtually no time to read or think about the amendments. I think it's precisely what's wrong with this body that we would try to rush things through. I've been here since January, and there have been no hearings on No Child Left Behind. I've had no hearings that involve teachers, no hearings that involve superintendents, no hearings that involve principals. I think this is an affront to the process. As I go around my state and I talk to teachers, I've yet to meet one teacher who's in favor of No Child Left Behind. They abhor it. They hate all the stuff we are telling them what to do from Washington. They want more local control. I'm one of the old-fashioned conservatives who does believe that schools are and should be in state control. There's no provision in the Constitution for the federal government to be involved, period. This was part of the Republican platform for nearly 30 years, that we didn't believe in federal control. We wanted to leave local control. I met with 6 teachers recently from Adair County. Many of them are special ed teachers. They like what they do. They like teaching kids who have difficulty learning and have to be taught in a different fashion in order to get through to these kids. But they showed me a cute little boy of 15 years old who has a three-word vocabulary. He's tested in world geography, and then the teacher is told that she's a bad teacher because the child who has a 3-word vocabulary did poorly on the testing. This is insane, and it needs to be discussed in a rational fashion. We need to have teachers involved in the process, for goodness sakes. Principals, superintendents. I have a letter here from the American Association of School Administrators, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the National Education Association, the National School Boards Association, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals. And they say, we hope that in getting this important work of getting policy right, we will not be pushed to the side in a race against the clock. I feel pushed aside. 868-page bill and 48 hours to read it. It is wrong. All I am asking for is a hearing to listen to teachers. Should we not listen to the teachers? A hearing to listen to the superintendents, a hearing to listen to the principals. Let them read the bill and find out what's in the bill. I'm not going to accept what Nancy Pelosi said, you can read about it after the fact. That's the process that's going on here. 868 pages, when are we going to read it? After they pass it. Who's been involved with crafting this legislation? I'm on the committee. Nobody asked me. Nobody consulted with me, and I think that's the same with most of the people on the committee. The letter from this group also says, we note that the proposed law is still heavily reliant on the idea of testing every child every year through one single high-stakes summative assessment. There are many problems. I would be in favor of getting rid of No Child Left Behind. No teachers are for it. I'd like to see a survey of teachers. I would like to have the teachers do a survey of their population to say who's in favor of No Child Left Behind before we act. I would like teachers to propose amendments to my office to fix No Child Left Behind if we're not going to scrap it. I would like to hear from the superintendents. What do you think of this 868-page bill we got yesterday or on Monday? What do you think of this bill, and how could we make it better? We will not have time to hear from them because we're struggling to get through the 868 pages and another 1,000 pages of amendments. This process is rotten from the top to the bottom, and what I would ask for is that we have a hearing Let's invite teachers to Washington. Let's invite superintendents. Let's invite principals to Washington. Let's find out what they think of No Child Left Behind before we rush through an 868-page bill that no one has had time to read. This is what's wrong with Washington. This is the type of arrogance about the way Washington works that is really making us unpopular in the public's eyes. And I say fix No Child Left Behind. I say repeal it or fix it, but at least give us time to read the bill. And I object to this unanimous consent.
Objection is heard, Mr. President. Recognized.
Mr. President, I'm sorry that the Senator of Kentucky is objecting to our meeting. I say to my friend from Kentucky, the one thing that I believe that both Senator Enzi and I did, and other members of our committee on both sides of the aisle did to get this bill to where it is, was to put aside ideology. To put aside ideology to do what's best for our kids. I believe the HELP Committee, on both sides of the aisle, Senator Enzi and I, on both sides, have done everything possible to move the bill in a considerate, logical, legislative manner. We started on this last year. I said to my friend from Kentucky, we had 10 hearings last year. 10 good, long hearings. We had superintendents. We had teachers. We had principals. We had a broad input from across America into what they wanted in a reauthorization bill. I'm sorry the senator wasn't here last year, but the Senate is a continuing body. Does that mean that every 2 years, we've got to start all over from scratch every time? So we had all our hearings last year. And that was cleared again with Senator Enzi and I. We talked, well, let's get the hearings out of the road, and then this year we could focus on putting the bill together. So we had our hearings. I say to my friend, we brought in teachers, principals, superintendents from all over America. And then, starting in January, we began a time-honored process whereby the chairman and ranking member started working on putting the bill together with our professional staff. That's why we have professional staff. Senator Alexander was involved in that. Other senators were brought in. Senator Bennett, Senator Franken, others on the Republican side were brought in on that. I would say this, Mr. President, the senator from Kentucky had every day since he was sworn in January to come to me or to go to Senator Enzi and say, I'm on the committee, here's what I would like in the bill. And that would have been considered. Other senators did that. I see two of them sitting here right now, who came and said, here's what I'd like to have in the bill. Well, I sat down with Senator Enzi. We discussed it. Some yes, some no, some modifications, work it out through the process as we went through. Now, I don't know if the senator from Kentucky ever went to see Senator Enzi about what he wanted in the bill. I know he didn't come see me. Our doors are open. There was no secret that we were meeting about this. We started in January. Everybody on our committee, the staffs all knew that. And so that is the legislative process. And when it's all done, we wanted to put together a bipartisan bill. That's what we did. Now, see, my friend from Kentucky, it wasn't filed 48 hours ago. It was filed a week ago yesterday, Tuesday. That bill was filed. It was put online. I put that bill online. So we had a whole week to look at it. And quite frankly, what happened is we got a feedback. I say to my friend, we put the bill online, we got a feedback from a lot of people, community out there, and as a result of that, we made some final changes. That is the legislative process. And so Senator Enzi and I worked together on a manager's amendment to incorporate some of the objections that came in during the week to make the bill even more bipartisan. And we filed that manager's amendment on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. But that wasn't the whole bill. I'd put the whole bill online a week ago Tuesday. It was just the manager's amendment that was, again, a fine-tuning of it before we went. before we met in markup. So I say that Senator Kentucky had every opportunity to let us know what he wanted in that bill, and I never saw him. I never saw him. He never came to me. I'm on the floor all the time. My door's open. My staff is available. My professional staff is available. And if the senator from Kentucky had something he wanted in the bill and it wasn't included, he has the right to offer an amendment. I wanted this committee to operate in an open manner, in a manner in which we have operated in the past legislatively. The senator didn't have something in the bill that he wanted in. He has the right to offer an amendment and to debate it and get a vote on it in our committee. And the senator has filed 74 amendments. We had 144 amendments filed. Under our rules, had to be filed 48 hours before. The senator from Kentucky offered 74 amendments. Well, now the senator from Kentucky is objecting to our even meeting to consider his own amendments. Please, someone explain the logic of that to the senator from Iowa. He's got the amendments. The process is open. He can offer amendments, get them debated, get them voted on. But the senator from Kentucky is objecting to us meeting in order to even consider his amendments. Secondly, I heard the senator again on the floor today and earlier, when we met earlier this morning in committee to start our process of marking it up the bill, said he wanted to do away with No Child Left Behind. That's exactly what this bill does. It gets rid of No Child Left Behind and some of the narrow prescriptions and prescriptions in the bill, and does, in fact, return a lot to local control. And we build a partnership with the federal government and state and local governments. A better partnership than what we've had in the past, and I think that's why we have a good bipartisan bill. Again, the senator from Kentucky and I probably have different views on this. I understand that. That's why we have a Senate. That's why we have debates. That's why we have committee meetings and markups. If I were writing the bill, I would write a completely different bill than the senator from Kentucky would write. He would write one completely different than mine. That's why we meet in committees. That's why we hammer these things out over a long process. You don't just shut the door and say it's my way or no way. I'm the chairman. I'm willing to listen to his amendments and have him offer them. But how can I hear his amendments? How can we consider his amendments if the senator won't even allow us to meet under the rules of the Senate? I have no logical explanation for that. Well, there's a lot more I could say, Mr. President, but this is just illogical. That's all I can say. It's just illogical. I see the senator from Colorado on his feet. I would yield to the senator from Colorado for any questions he might have.
Mr. President.
Senator from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. President, thank you. And I have never done this in the 2.5 years that I have been in the Senate. I haven't been here a long time, and I've spent a lot of time complaining about the way this place works. But I had to come to the floor to implore the senator from Kentucky to reconsider his objection. And I do it not because I have a perspective on this as a United States Senator. I do it because I had the honor of serving as the superintendent of schools of Denver for 4 years of my life and have dedicated years of my life, but more importantly, seen the dedication of the people that are working in our schools. The senator speaks of the tragedy of this process. I'll tell you what a tragedy is. A tragedy is that only 9 of 100 children living in poverty in this country in 2011 can expect to get a college degree. That's a tragedy. The fact that when I became superintendent in the Denver Public Schools, on the 10th grade math test, there were 33 African-American students proficient on that test and 61 Latino students proficient on that test, a test, Mr. President, that if we're honest with ourselves, which we're not, measures a junior high school standard of mathematical proficiency in Europe. That's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that there are people working in our schools right now at 11:15 in Colorado, doing the best they can to serve our kids, and we think a 2-hour meeting is too long. That's a tragedy. I wouldn't have drafted the bill exactly the way it's been drafted. The chairman knows that. He and I even have disagreements about some of the things in this bill. But finally, after 2.5 years, there's a bipartisan piece of legislation in front of the committee that's having the benefit of the work of the senators that are there, and we're told that meeting for 2 hours is too long. The senator has every right to make his objection under the Senate rules, which the President has observed may need some updating. But I think if you ask yourself, why is it that we have a 12% approval rating that's going down? It's because of this kind of thing. I actually looked forward to hearing the Senator of Kentucky's amendments. I wanted to know what they were. As the chairman mentioned, there are 146 amendments that have been offered. I have some that I've offered, only 3 or 4. The senator from Kentucky has 74 of the 140 amendments. In the 2 hours we met today, we considered 3 amendments, I think, or voted on 3. We were debating a Republican amendment, and I was very interested in what Senator Isaacson had to say when our meeting came to an end. If we're going to do this in 2-hour increments, my math, I am proficient in math, thank goodness. My math is that it would take 60 days to do this in 2-hour increments. You know why people are fed up with this place? It's because they don't think the debate we're having is about them. They think the debate we're having is about us. And you know what? They're right about that. They're right about that. The teachers all across my state, all across the district that I've worked in, want us to lift this burden from them. In my view, the biggest federal overreach ever in domestic policy. And that's what this bill does, not for ideological reasons, but to help respond to the voices of our teachers, respond to the voices of our superintendent, respond to the voices of our parents who are sick and tired of the almost comical, but to them painful, measures of annual yearly progress. The idea that we're going to label all of our schools failing by 2014 because we have a completely made-up accountability system in Washington, D.C. This bill does away with that. Doesn't do it in exactly the way that I would want to do it, left to my own devices, but it does it in a way that can get bipartisan support in the United States Senate. So, and I mean this broadly, I'm not saying this in this case, when people see the political games that are being played here, when they see people that are unwilling to work together, and they are killing themselves to deliver for our kids, I'm not sure there's anything more backhanded we could do. So I would beg the senator from Kentucky to let us have the hearing, the committee meeting. Let us consider his amendments and all the rest. Today's conversation was one of the first, I regret to say this, one of the first substantive conversations that I have had in a committee hearing since I have been here. And I thank the chairman and I thank the ranking member for creating a context where that could happen. Let's have the conversation. I'd be happy to meet 24 hours a day to talk about this subject with the senator from Kentucky. 24 hours a day, every day. Because if you care about the widening gap between rich and poor in this country, you cannot sustain anything remotely approaching
Will the senator yield for a question?
I will in 1 second. Anything remotely approaching our claim to be a land of opportunity when 9 out of 100 children born in poverty can graduate with a college degree, when 91 out of 100 children who are unfortunate enough to be born poor are constrained to the margin of our democracy and the margin of our economy. And I'll stop here, but just to be clear about it, there are 100 seats in the United States Senate. And when I walk in this room, I think about what if the 100 people that were here were children living in poverty in the United States. Here's how many would have a college degree. That chair, that chair, that chair, that chair, these 4 chairs, and this one. That's it. The rest of this chamber would be occupied by people that didn't have the benefit of a college degree.
Will the senator yield for a question?
Sure.
My question is,
I believe I have the floor. Mr. President.
I'm asking to yield for a question. Am I understanding
The
this? Yes.
senator from Iowa has the floor.
And again, I recognize the senator wants to, let's do this in a logical, again, orderly manner. And people wanted to be here to speak. I think the senator from Colorado made some good points, and I was yielding to him for a question. I would yield if the senator from Minnesota has a question, and then obviously the senator from Kentucky will have every right to speak.
Senator from North Carolina.
Parliamentary inquiry. Under the current structure, how long before a member on this side can be recognized?
A senator cannot be recognized until the floor is relinquished.
I thank the chair, and I yield back.
I would yield to the senator from Minnesota for a question.
Senator from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to ask a question. I just really want to know, because I've only been here 2+ years, but it seems to me that actually, and from my perspective, this is my perspective, that this committee has worked in a pretty functional way. It took a long time. We started having hearings on this, how long ago was it, about 1.5 years?
Friend from Minnesota, it started at least 1.5 years ago, maybe 1.75 years ago.
Okay. And during this whole period, I talked with you. I have asked to see the ranking member and meet with him in his office to tell him what I wanted to see in this bill. I agree with the senator from Kentucky who talked about there's just one test at the end of the year and the teachers don't get to see the results until the kids are out the door. I think that's terrible, and I'm offering an amendment that I think that the ranking member referred to today. And I have gone all around my state since I've been a committee member and talked to teachers about what they want to see to fix this or to get rid of No Child Left Behind and replace it with something that makes sense. And that's exactly what we're doing. Isn't this the normal order of things? That's my question. I went to Senator Alexander and met with him in his office to explain what I wanted in this. And my staff has been meeting with every other member's, not every other member's staff, but every other member's staff who seems to be engaged in this on both sides of the aisle, with your staff, with the committee staff, with staff from Senator Enzi's office. I keep hearing whose staff they're talking to about this piece of this amendment or that amendment or this piece that's going to be in the manager's bill. I think I have spent more time on this bill than on any other bill in in my time here, and nothing has stopped me from being engaged in it. And I don't think there's anything that has stopped anyone in our committee from going back over the transcripts of the many, many hearings we had. And I do that often. So my question is this, am I wrong here, or hasn't this been conducted in a way that's actually, as these things go, well, pretty functional for any member who wants to be engaged in the process? And I think what it does is I think there's a responsibility on the behalf of committee members. And isn't there a responsibility on the behalf of committee members to be active in the committee, to come to hearings, to be engaged in the process, to approach the chair, to approach the ranking member? Isn't that part of our responsibility?
Well, I say to my friend from Minnesota, I think that's right. If you want to be engaged in the process of legislation, then, like I said, the senator from Minnesota has talked to me many times about what he wants in the bill, as well as the senator from Colorado, and people on the Republican side have talked to me about what should be in the bill and what shouldn't be in the bill. That is the process. And I would say to my friend from Minnesota that I've been chairman twice before, not of this committee, but of the Agriculture Committee, when we did major agricultural bills. One was in 2001 and the other one was in 2007. And both times I worked with the ranking members, basically the same kind of process. And we got bipartisan bills through that were signed by President Bush, both times, 2001 and in 2007. And this was the process we used. And we let amendments be offered. We opened up, and no one on the committee ever raised an objection to our meeting during the Senate session. And we got our jobs done. That's the way we've always done it. And that's as the legislative, as I said, considerate, logical legislative process, I say to my friend from Minnesota. That's the way we've always conducted it. And what it does is it allows members, senators who are interested, as the senator from Minnesota has been so keenly interested in this education bill, to give them time to go to the ranking member, to go to me, to go to other members, see what can get in the bill. And I said to my friend from Minnesota that I'm sure we didn't put in everything the senator wanted in the bill.
No, absolutely not.
But I think the senator has the right to offer the amendments in committee.
And by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you in answering my question, but I really want to thank the ranking member for his open. We talk on the phone about this. We've talked over dinner about this bill. I want to thank Senator Alexander, who, I asked to come to his office, and we spent a very, very substantive session talking exactly about how I saw this, what was wrong with No Child Left Behind, and how we could essentially get rid of it and solve what it is that every teacher hates about it, and what principals hate about it, and what superintendents hate about it. And Senator Alexander and I had some disagreements on things, but man, I think we agreed on 80% of this. And I think I had an 80% agreement. I mean, that's Senator Enzi's rule. He has this 80% rule, which is that we agree on 80% and we focus on the 20%. I have a 64% rule, which is that 80% of the time we agree on 80%. And you see that Senator Bennett laughed because he is proficient at math.
I didn't know if the senator from Kentucky wanted me to yield to him for a question to get involved in a colloquy or not, or the senator from North Carolina.
On time, Chairman.
I didn't know if the senator from Kentucky wanted me to yield for a question or a colloquy. I'd be glad to do that.
Yes, Mr. President, I do have a question. Several of the senators on the committee have said they would be happy to have meetings 24 hours a day. Why don't we have a hearing on the bill? Why don't we invite teachers, superintendents, and principals? There's been no hearing since the last election. There's no reason why we can't. The other question that you have and that you need to answer is, what do you say to the American Association of School Administrators, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the National Education Association, the National School Boards Association, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals who say, let's don't get pushed aside in this race against the clock? I'm not opposed to much of what is going to happen with the bill. I think No Child Left Behind has many errors, and we can fix some of them. What I'm opposed to is the process of giving us an 868-page bill yesterday and saying take it or leave it. We need more time to read the bill. We need these organizations who are very interested in education and is their livelihood to come in and make comment on this bill. That would be an open hearings process. So anything else to me is disingenuous.
I say to my friend from Kentucky, and I will yield the floor very soon, I say to my friend from Kentucky that, I will say it again, we put this bill online a week ago Tuesday. Some of the mail that you're talking about, the letters, came in after that because they read the bill. I think the primary objections on all those letters had to do with teacher evaluations and what we were going to do in the bill on teacher evaluations. Well, that's what we fixed in the manager's amendment that we laid down Monday morning. I am told, I haven't seen it, but I'm told that the National Education Association, for example, has withdrawn from that letter because of the fix we made, and that's why you put the bill online. I said that earlier. We put it online. A lot of objections came in. We modified it in a manager's amendment to move forward on that bill. That's exactly how we do it. And I say to my friend from Kentucky that we've had a whole week. Again, my friend has filed 74 amendments to the bill. How can you file 74 amendments if you haven't read the bill? I mean, it seems to me if you file 74 amendments, you must have read the bill. I assume that last week the senator must have read the bill and then filed 74 amendments on the bill. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I didn't read the bill, but here's 74 amendments. That doesn't kind of hold together logically. So, again, I'll just close on this note. The senator from Colorado is absolutely right. We're here talking about process and who's up, who's down, all of this kind of stuff. And these teachers out in America that are grappling with kids now, that are under this burden of No Child Left Behind and these AYPs, knowing that no matter how much they progress their kids in 1 year, they're still failing. And this bill relieves them of that, takes that yoke off of them. Every one of us has heard, when we go back to our states, from teachers, from parents, from administrators, that this No Child Left Behind is not good. It's got to be changed. It's got to be fixed, and that's what our bill does. Yet how are we going to change it? How are we going to fix it if we're not even allowed to meet? So again, I hope the senator from Kentucky again would allow us to move forward in this process and allow us to go ahead and have our amendment process. I say to my friend, he has another shot at this bill on the floor. So we have the committee, then we're going to come to the floor, and amendments will be offered on the floor. That's the legislative process. No one person gets to dictate what's in this bill. Not one person. Not me, not Senator Enzi, not the senator from Kentucky. No one person gets to dictate it. But we all working together collaboratively in a bipartisan fashion, I think, can shape and fashion this bill and move it forward. Mr. President, I do yield the floor.
President.
Senator from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. President, I thank the recognition and say to my colleagues, there are a lot of blanket statements that have been made about one's level of participation. I've negotiated with the chairman of this committee for 9 months on the reauthorization of our emergency preparedness and biodefense in this country. I know what negotiations are. I know what compromise is. I know what commitment of time is. I got this bill last Friday. I'll find out where it went online or which copy went online. My staff got this bill last Friday. Yes, we have read it. We've read it, put together 8 amendments. Not as voluminous as Senator Rand Paul, but he gets that ability, just like he gets the ability to be heard. The minority's only leverage in the institution is to have an opportunity to offer amendments and to debate them. I hear what you're saying, but based upon the time frame that you set. And you don't get the privilege of doing that when you've got to deal with a minority. And I know that the chairman, who I have deep respect for, has been here a long time, and he knows it. And this could have been something very easily worked out with communications on both sides of the aisle. And the fact is that as I prepared for this markup, I was told that there was an agreement. And that agreement meant that the chairman and the ranking member were going to hold this bill intact. There were going to be no exceptions to it. They were going to vote for anything that was substantive. They would make sure this bill didn't change. Well, that doesn't give one a lot of comfort at knowing what the outcome of amendments is going to be, regardless of the merit of the amendment. And when we started this morning, the chairman was very gracious to me. He let me say my due for about 5 minutes, and I'm appreciative of it. And I made it very clear to members at that time. The only thing I asked them to do was weigh it on the merits of the amendment. And mine was first amendment out of the chute. And it was my best shot. I'll say right here on the Senate floor, it was a damn good amendment. And you know what? In lockstep, we went down the line, and it proved to me there's a deal. And you know, the next amendment was offered by Senator Franken. And I was the first one that stood up and said, I disagree with the base text. It was offered by both of you. But I'll support it. You know, I'm in year 17. Senator Franken said he spent more time on this bill than any bill ever. Boy, if that's the case, that's a sad statement about how much time we spend on legislation, because you couldn't have had it more than since last Tuesday, according to the chairman himself.
Senator, yield for a question.
I appreciate it. I will take questions at some point, but
I think that was really unfair.
I patiently sat here waiting for my own time, and I'll use it, and then I'll allow the senator to stand and ask a question. So, you know, in the same statement, there was criticism of the participation. Apparently we, or I, or Senator Paul, hadn't spent the time or hadn't devoted the time to this particular piece of legislation. I've been working on this for years. I think the chairman knows I'm passionate when I get involved. It's not from a standpoint of a lack of knowledge. It's from a standpoint of trying to achieve the right end. Now, the chairman said very clearly, we're not going to make this perfect out of committee. We're going to have another shot at it on the Senate floor. Well, let me remind my colleagues, 55 times in this Congress, the majority has chosen to fill the amendment tree, meaning no minority member has an opportunity to amend legislation. How can I feel good about a truncated markup process that happens 4 days after I physically got an 868-page bill, when the caveat that I'm given is, oh, but you'll have another opportunity to do it on the floor? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think the chairman can make an assurance to me that we're going to have an open rule on the Senate floor that allows unlimited amendments. If he can, I will yield to him for that consent. It's above your pay grade. It's above mine, too. And the reality is that decision won't be made by the chairman. It won't be made by the ranking member. And it really won't be made because somebody's trying to perfect a bill. Now, I learned a long time ago, coming to the Senate floor and screaming, that doesn't do any good. Yeah, it wakes people up in the gallery. People at home think must be important. This is about our kids. This is about whether K through 12 education works. Now, there's one takeaway that we can all make. No Child Left Behind was well-intended legislation and implemented poorly, embraced by very few. North Carolina happened to be a state that received a tremendous amount of waivers. We got a waiver from average yearly progress because our state actually had a yardstick that was better, and the Secretary of Education recognized that. It didn't, through those waivers, change any of the federal intrusion into K through 12. Let me explain what I mean. We've got right now about 93 education programs that are authorized. Not all of them are funded. And you know what? If your system determines that you can use one of those programs, you can access that money. But if there's not a program for what your problem is, you don't get a shot at the money. I suggested through legislation that we take all of those programs and throw them into two pots of money and give states full flexibility to decide how they use the money. This bill, they talk about flexibility. Well, it does eliminate the title of 40 pieces of 40 programs, and it throws them into 6 new major, mega education programs. Still with the strings. You've got to spend it the way we design it in Washington, not the way you interpret it at home. And for a superintendent, that shouldn't settle real well with you. Flexibility versus prescription. One way is federal intrusion into local education. The other is a partnership for education success. Now, having gone with this one-size-fits-all called No Child Left Behind, I would think that the natural swing would be, geez, if we really want to fix education, why don't we enlist educators, superintendents, principals in this bill? The 868 pages that we're going to debate, and it'll happen. The chairman knows that. Minority rules can only last so long, and we'll be marking this bill up, and hopefully it'll come to the floor, and we'll get an opportunity to amend it. But incorporated in this bill is 20 pages that define reading. Now, I want you to think about that. When the claims are made that this is not federal intrusion, this is not a one-size-fits-all, this bill spends 20 pages defining for every local school system what reading is. This is insane. I've got a simple challenge for my colleagues. What happened about the accountability of parents and teachers and principals and elected school board and community leaders? Healthy communities today have a relatively successful K through 12 education system. And in most cases, it's because employers recognize the fact that that is potentially their future workforce. And their educational success is that community success for survival and for advancement. What this bill does is say, we're going to determine what highly gifted is for teachers. We're going to determine what success or failure is. We're going to take the place of the parent, of the teacher, of the superintendent, of the elected officials, of the business community. We're just going to take that all over. Now, from a standpoint of the amount of money, we're still participating at about the same level. It's about a 10% of the overall cost of K through 12. But if you don't play by our rules, you don't get our programs, you don't get our money. And I dare say there's not a one of us that recognizes the fact that every community has a unique problem. Where one is a school building, the next one is available highly gifted teachers. Where one might be the ability to have a second language taught, The other one might be the passion of Teach for America teachers that infiltrate their system. You see, I can't come up, no matter how many pages I write, with a K-12 education bill that I can honestly say trumps what I think any community that I represent could come up with on their own. If anything, I know I would be woefully short of what they could do. The answer to me is let's get them more in charge. Let's empower them more. Let's give them greater flexibility. Let's be what we are best at, a financial partner in the success of education. As a matter of fact, we will take up an amendment at some point that triggers the flexibility in the 868 pages. But it's only triggered if a school system accepts one of 6 things. One of those things is actually federally mandated firing of the principal or X amount of teachers of a failing school. How in the world could we put in federal legislation that you get the full flexibility if you're willing to go out and fire the principal or 20 teachers at a school that has been determined by Washington to be a failure? This is almost surreal to me. In many ways, it goes way past where No Child Left Behind tried to get to, which was creating a measurement tool that could be seen by all and judgments made based upon that, though it wasn't perfect. Now, what my colleague, Senator Paul, has asked for, quite honestly, is very reasonable. Take the bill, the one that we're considering, not the one that went up last Tuesday, and I got this email while I've been talking. The original ESE bill was put up online 1 week ago. The manager's amendment on Monday. The document explaining the changes was online yesterday. So everybody's right. The only problem is that what Senator Paul described, which was the bill that we're considering right now, it went up on Monday. The explanations for the changes went up yesterday. And I'm sure if Senator Paul came up with 74 amendments, his staff's been a little busier than the 7 or 8 that my staff came up with. But what Senator Paul has asked for is very reasonable. Take this bill, not a hypothetical bill, and let's just have a hearing on it. Not a markup, a hearing. At whatever speed the chairman can put it together. Where we bring in actual educators, we bring in superintendents, we bring in school board members. Maybe we bring in a parent. That would be novel. You know, I can still remember reading in the Washington, D.C. schools when I started 17 years ago. Remember the first teacher, parent, mentor meeting. I remember the expectations that I'd have a parent that really didn't care about a 5th grader's future. If they did, why would this child be so challenged to read? And what I met as I walked in and met with that parent was the parent of a 5th grader who said, "Congressman, you're my son's only hope. I want him to have so much more than I do." I wasn't there because of a government program. I was there because I think every child ought to have the opportunity to succeed. And you can't write that in a bill. You can't describe for every community how you get to success. If we could, No Child Left Behind would have been perfect, because everybody believed it would have that big a change. You see, this is about not just changing a system, it's about creating passion. Passion for success. I would tell you passion for success is not taking the federal government's HR department, which is pitiful, and saying, well, let's export this to every school system in America. That's not the answer. The answer is for us to get out of the way, for us to empower those local officials to make the changes they need to, and for the judgment to be those community leaders, those parents. We'll have a debate soon on what's highly qualified. And it's very prescriptive as to what a highly qualified teacher needs to be. But you know, in my definition, highly qualified is a pharmacist that's decided that they didn't want to work in the store anymore and they'd like to go teach chemistry in the high school. But under all the federal standards today, that person can't do it because they don't have a certificate to do it. And we'll codify that into law in 868 pages. And all the talented folks that we've got around the country that could walk into a classroom and not only have the educational foundation to be able to teach our students, but the passion to want to be there and to say it in a way that wasn't taught out of a textbook but was learned through their occupation. It's gone. It'll be gone. And even though that pharmacist may not want to compound drugs anymore, if their choice is that or retirement, they'll be retired because we've cut off something that they could contribute back into. I didn't mean to go this long, but I'll be honest, in my patience to get the opportunity to speak, I heard some outlandish comments, some that, quite honestly, I could take very personally. To suggest that any member had sufficient time to review this legislation, the only person that could make that comment would be one that got the bill before I did. And I think I'm entitled to have it at the same time every other member of the committee gets it. To have an agreement that says, well, we're just not going to take amendments. You can offer them, but we're not going to take them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that that's a black eye on the entire institution if we would adopt a policy like that. But I've seen it up close and personal already. I'd love to take the chairman at his word that we'll have an opportunity on the floor to fix this bill, but I can't go based upon how the floor is run up to this time and believe that there'll be one opportunity for me to offer an amendment. So I've got to roll my dice on the markup processing committee. And I've got to do it in a way that accommodates every member, and if Senator Paul believes he needs more time, then I've got to be there to try to defend his time. That's inconvenient for people, it's going to be inconvenient. But the truth is, our children's future is way more important than our convenience. Our children's future is way too important to rush a bill. Our children's future is way more important than a deal between a ranking member and a chairman as to how to make this easy out of committee so that we can fix it on the floor. I've been here 17 years. Perfection is not possible in Congress. But perfection should be our goal every day. When you look at what we've debated and why, you understand why less than 15% of the American people think highly of us. I think what we're getting ready to do will have a significant impact on how that number is reduced, not how it is increased. I thank my colleagues for their patience. They certainly don't have to request time from me. I will yield back and gladly allow them whatever of their own time they'd like to take. I yield the floor.
Go ahead.